Hello, thank you so much for joining me. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today I'm going to do a deep dive into the Scorpio full moon of the 7th of May 2020, which occurs at 11:45 Universal Central Time or at 6:45 AM on the eastern seaboard of America. Now what I want to do with this chart is not just look at the event of the Scorpio full moon, but look at the chart of the overall impact that this particular event will have. So go beyond the impact of the moon in opposition with the sun, which of course is in Taurus. Now before I begin, it's a real pleasure to have you with me. If you'd like to connect more directly with me, you can do so through Twitter at Horoscope Ace is my handle, or you can subscribe for your monthly magazine, Astrology magazine, which is absolutely action-packed with goodies, or your free daily horoscope by clicking the link beneath this video. Or if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, embrace real astrology, go beyond your zodiac sign, or perhaps buy your astrology reports, please also see the links below. But thank you so much for joining me. So this event occurs with the sun at 17 degrees in Taurus and of course the moon at 17 degrees in Scorpio. So we have a polarity between the drive and the passion and the determination of the sun in the grounded, realistic sign of Taurus, and the deep emotion that we get with the sign of Scorpio with the moon there. Now in a natal chart, someone with a Scorpio moon can be very private, sometimes rather shy, sometimes even a little bit wary until they really get to know people. But because both of these signs are fixed, which give them a degree of stability, change is not something that is generally welcomed. It's more about continuity. But we're living in a time when there's very little continuity. The other thing about this day chart is that it puts the sun in the 10th house, and the 10th house is the connection we all have to the world at large. Also we have Uranus here, which is the planet of disruption, of unpredictability, of freedom, but also restlessness. And also we have Mercury, the planet of thought and talk, travel, distribution. Now Mercury is very close to the sun, only 3 degrees apart. So therefore this brings a much greater logic to the emotional dimension of the moon. So it's kind of saying to us that as we try to balance things between the energy of the sun and the sensitivity of the moon, that if we can step back a little bit and be a little bit more objective in a way, that's going to help us a lot. And those three planetary influences are all in the 10th house. So if you think that the way new technologies are coming through to fight back against COVID, that's coming through Uranus. But we can also see the break that the planet's having from the mass consumerism that we do impose upon it. That actually gives the Earth a little bit of time to breathe. So the Earth is having some space, some time out. But also Mercury is of course involved in travel, and the travel industry, tourism and anything to do with hospitality has really been impacted. But I think this connection of all these energies suggests that we're going to see more collaboration coming forwards from the more senior bodies in the world. So I think there's going to be more collective energy coming through. So what else is going on with this chart? Well, the ascendant is in Leo, but the ascendant is also right close to the midpoint between the sun and the moon, which is a critical point because it's the kind of balance of energies between these two points. The sun in that rather determined, stable Taurus, and the moon in that intense Scorpio. So Leo likes it loud and proud, likes to be more fiery about things, and this ascendant on the midpoint suggests that we are going to see more fire coming in to the fight back against COVID, more initiative. But whether we're all going to be responsive to the changes we need to make immediately is another matter, because not only is that ascendant and that midpoint in the fixed sign of Leo, and all these three planets in Taurus in fixed signs, the moon in the fixed sign of Scorpio, we have Saturn, the ultimate fixer, in Aquarius, along with the part of fortune, and also Mars. So a lot of fixed energy. And I think what Uranus is pushing us to do is to make changes, and those changes, obviously, some governments have been very slow to get into a response, others have been very, very speedy. In a flash, the South Koreans have really handled this crisis with a great deal of deft aplumbness. But there are other influences in this chart which are very fascinating. We all need to communicate, perhaps more than ever, through technology at the moment, and the asteroid of relating, Juno, continues to be in retrograde, but is in opposition with Chiron, the wounded healer, in the 9th house. Is that kind of saying that we can't get together? In a way, we have to use technology. We can't have much intimacy. So there's a bit of a wound being kept distant from people that we'd like to be closer to. Also, Uranus is still in a broad square with Saturn, which is creating frustration. This is the movement against people saying, look, life is never going to be no risk. They want their freedom. And then you've got other people saying, no, we've got to see about the greater good. So there is a bit of a conflict there. The position that Saturn is in, along with Jupiter, the planet that rules international affairs, which is in full in Capricorn, in its conjunction with Pluto, which is about transformation, and now in retrograde, are all in the 6th house of health, physical and practical health. But these two positions are squaring with the midheaven, which is at 29 degrees in Aries. So our overall needs, our worldly needs, we are having to compromise. We're not getting everything we want in order to protect our health. Also, Saturn's right angle to Uranus suggests Saturn in Aquarius is very much linked in a way to this crisis, I feel, because of the way it's affecting all of us. It's Aquarius energy is about overall humanity, and therefore there's a restriction on overall humanity. And the 6th house is kind of, being pinned in. It's kind of brittle. It's, hemmed in with the detail. We're having to be very cautious. We can't give it big in the way that we might perhaps ordinarily want to do. But there are some smashing influences as well, not least that we have a glorious link between Venus and Mars. And Venus is in the 11th house of humanity and Mars in the 7th house of relating. But Mars in Aquarius is much less egotistical here. It may want to be individual, but it still gets that it has to knit together with other people. So that can lead to some glorious connections for some people, but also some disastrously confused ones for others, because Neptune and Venus are in a right angle. So if we do get to know someone new, perhaps online, and this person seems to be the bee's knees, I wouldn't rush to, get too close to them, even if it is digitally. There is a bit of a paradox in that, isn't there? Because Venus squaring Neptune is very deceptive. So it could be someone that we really feel, we can bond with if we meet them in the flesh, but actually there may be elements of their nature or their background or their history which are actually not for us at all. Also, we can see that Mars is in a broad square with Mercury, and that also is going to be creating a degree of impatience. So although we can talk all day long about Taurus being about resources in a practical context, about money, the fact that money has dried up because money isn't turning over, so the global financial system is slowed right down, but we're having to deal with the emotional impact of that in a deep way through Scorpio, which is in the 4th house. So a lot of us are marooned at home in a very quiet, perhaps even meditative way, which can be healing, can be helpful. There is another part of us which is probably missing our right to spend money freely, to enjoy consumption, because that's what human beings like doing, and we're being pushed at the moment to show restraint. So with Mars in Aquarius being rebellious, if not so egotistical about the individual person, but perhaps rebellious in terms of our values, in a square with Mercury, that can create some real bitterness, also some sharp, jagged conversations. So we've got 2 squares going between Taurus energy and Aquarius energy, from Saturn to Uranus and from Mars to Mercury. So that frustration that has shown itself more recently is going to continue to be to the fore. But I think all we can do is work through the steps, and the steps is about reform. And one of the things the planet is getting a chance to do is just stop and breathe, and we're seeing these amazing pictures from around the world of cities before and after. And where I live, which is not a big place, it's only about 80,000 citizens, but I live quite close to the town centre, and the air is so much clearer here. And this is just a small medieval town in England. So imagine what it must be like in some of these huge towns and cities. The air is so much clearer, we can hear and see the wildlife more. Obviously COVID-19 is tragic, it's awful, and we want to try to find the solutions as soon as possible, but those solutions are going to come through reform, and reform comes through changes to our personal behaviour, personal hygiene, organisation, working from home where possible, perhaps missing out on some of the luxurious pleasures that we ordinarily perhaps have taken for granted. And that is Jupiter conjunct Pluto, I feel. Obviously when they were together last time we had the financial crash. It's happened again. You know, people underestimate astrology far too much. Now the virus part of this situation, I feel, did come from that conjunction between the moon and Neptune in Pisces at the turn of the year. I know the virus had started by then, but the impact on the world at large, on the solar return, was writ large with the moon conjunct Neptune in the sign of Pisces. So that's very uncontainable energy, it's spreading, it's hard to pinpoint, it's almost invisible, and that's all what this virus is being. But I do think that we are going to see more joined up thinking. We are going to see people learning to collaborate more. Having the part of fortune, for example, on the descendant in the 6th house, can see that collaboration coming through improved logistics, sharing of information, greater knowledge about how to treat the condition itself. We're now finding out that respirators can be an extremely bad thing to use because it doesn't work the same way as pneumonia, this condition, at all. And of course, new medicines coming through, that's the 6th house, more testing, track and tracing, all that effort's going to be coming through this 6th house energy, and that's really encouraging. But for many of us, ordinarily, the Scorpio full moon would be about balancing our longer term resources and commitments and investment of energy, time, emotion, or even love relationships with the more practical elements of everyday life. So I think that this particular full moon will still have those energies, but it's going to make us much more conscious of who we are tethered to. If we're not happy about being tethered to them, I think there's going to be quite a lot of frustration building up. If we're very happily tethered and we can accept that this is a period of transition, then this can be a time to set our intentions to enjoy home baking, making things with our hands, crafting, spending more time in the garden or in outdoor spaces if you're allowed in your particular environment, to just go for a good walk or a cycle ride and get some fresh air, and all that earthy kind of stuff that comes through Taurus, as long as we can think on our feet with Mercury's help, is going to be a very positive thing. So that summarises the overall event. And now I'm going to outline how it's going to impact on each of the 12 zodiac signs. Please stay with me for that. Now, in terms of your particular zodiac sign, for the sign of Aries, this particular full moon kind of reflects what this day chart is about. It is about the money in the here and now is something that we need, but if you can economize a little bit, I think it will create a sense of security. If you're not able to economize, it's about not beating yourself up if you haven't got as much as you would normally have, and not letting it affect your sense of self-worth, which the energy of Taurus is very much about. It's not just about cash and material things, it's about how we think about ourselves. Now, if you are a Taurus, this continues to be a time when you're really being pushed to welcome new ways of doing things, when you're a sign that really likes things as they are. The status quo gives you a sense of comfort and security. The last couple of years, Saturn and Pluto have been pushing you more and more, along with Uranus, as it dipped into your sign in 2018 for, as I say, 5.5 months, and from March 2019 to the end of the year, and all of this year, Uranus has been pushing you to welcome change, new ways of looking at things. If you're someone who particularly likes the way it was, I do feel that you may be finding things a little bit aggravating. But this full moon suggests that somebody could challenge your orthodoxy, your view, your world view, because the moon's in the opposite side. They may feel, because Mercury and the Sun are so tightly together, you'll jump into too many conclusions and you need to listen to what they have to say. It's nothing wrong with being very single-minded. It's a great gift that you have and to have, but at the moment it is very important to try to listen to others' viewpoints as well, and let this potential for change come in. Don't resist it. That will just create more tension. Now, if you're a Gemini, this particular full moon may be to do with your health in a psychological way and a physical way. Because Gemini people work so wonderfully well in terms of airy communication, embracing the more vulnerable side of your nature is something you don't always find easy. And even when you're talking about emotions, you may rationalize things a lot. So this full moon horoscope is basically saying to you, look, you can deal with the practicalities in your life, you also have to deal with your fears. And if you embrace them, they become part of you. Don't judge your fears, and don't be fearful that anyone else will judge your fears. But I do think in a work situation, do watch out for someone who may be an opponent but may not be showing their hand. Now, if you're a Cancer person, this energy ordinarily I'd be saying to you, well, there are going to be opportunities for you to socialise over the next couple of weeks, but you have to time manage. But I think there's a lot of energy working around you at the moment. It's to do with the past and past involvements. You could be feeling very sentimental, very nostalgic. You could be really missing someone you can't see because of the lockdown. Absolutely, entirely understandable. But also, this chart does give you an opportunity through Neptune and Mercury to reach out, but perhaps not necessarily be a little bit open about how things can unfold, because you still have Jupiter and Pluto in your 7th house. Your relationships have been going through the most incredible changes since 2008. It's possible that some major people have gone out of your life in that period of time. It's possible that your outlook around relating has changed. The problem with Pluto is it can be very ruthless. So it's vitally important that if you are thinking about making changes in your romantic situation, which can be this, in your case, 11th, 5th house axis, that you do think it through carefully. But certainly Venus in your 12th solar house may be seeing you analyse what to do. Now, Leo, this particular full moon is in the part of your horoscope to do with your emotions. And the Sun, Mercury and Uranus are right at the top of your scope. You're going to find it hard, basically, even if you want to keep some of your emotions private, somehow or another they may end up in public, particularly with the midpoint here in your sign. So I feel that if you feel your work-life balance is very much out of kilter, it could be because you're marooned at home. It may be you're one of those people who's having to go to work all the time and not getting enough rest, particularly if you are a medical worker or a key service provider. So I think this is basically saying to you, it's going to be important for you to fulfill your obligations, but also protect your home, your family, your emotions. Anytime chilled out in the garden, if you have one, or your local park, go for a nice gentle walk would be a smart thing to do. Now Virgo. Virgo, this axis occurs on your 3rd and 9th house. So the 3rd house for the moon can be a bit denying of deeper emotions, but you wouldn't say that about Scorpio moon, would you? And the 9th house energies is you finding your voice and probably being a bit more outspoken about the things that you feel are not right. Now that could be a political view, it could be that your longer term planning is changing, you may be thinking more about gaining knowledge. So if you are lucky enough to be able to sign up for an online course, that would be a very good thing to do. But someone close to you may resist your desire to change your world in some kind of way, because they may want to keep it as it is. Remember, Scorpio in Scorpio is fixed and stubborn as well. Now, Libra. This particular set of energies in Taurus is in your 8th house of change. So, therefore, deep change. Therefore, the moon is in your 2nd house of everyday matters. And if you are in a situation where everyday finance is particularly short, and you have a situation where you're not getting the support you want from a financial institution, you know, from a bank, the government, through state benefits, or from a partner, it could leave you feeling uneasy. But you know, there's a lot in this chart to like for you. There really, really is. It's just still, I feel that ongoing kind of family and emotional stuff that's been so powerful for you over the last couple of years. If you are making changes inside yourself, things are moving, don't let anyone put a massive guilt trip on you. Now Scorpio, this of course is your full moon. But this full moon for you is essentially about your relationships. If a relationship isn't working for you, particularly with Venus in that very, very intense 8th house of your solar chart, I think things are going to come up to the ball over the next 2 weeks. And with Uranus opposite the moon, but it's okay, it's a wideish 10-degree orb, but that's going to be moving forwards all the time. So wherever you are in Scorpio, Uranus is having more of an impact as time goes on, particularly if you're born in the first 10 degrees of Scorpio, for this year at least. I think there's every chance you're feeling quite restless. And but it does pick up on the 2nd decan. So even if you're born into the first 7 degrees of the 2nd decan, which is ruled by Neptune and Jupiter, I do feel there could be a sense that a relationship needs to be thought about. That could be a professional relationship, could be a relationship with yourself. If you feel that you're not as content with your situation as you would like, there's something for you to think and discuss. But because you can be very private, it is possible that you will still be working out your position, particularly if you are wanting to make a fundamental change. But you know, don't rush things. With Mercury next to the Sun, there could be a tendency to come to snap judgments for us all. Now Sagittarius. The North Node being in Gemini for you, along with Venus, is delicious when it comes to relationships. But this chart is very much about practicalities for you. And because you're a zodiac sign that's very progressive and you're very optimistic, you know, your ruler Jupiter always wants you to move on to the next exciting project. You're not a great one for emotional navel gazing, but if you're rushing past some kind of difficulty or painful event, or there's something from the past you've not integrated into your being as much as you could do just yet, this particular full moon is really prompting you to take note, to listen up, sailor, as they would say. And so don't rush past something. If there is something you're feeling very tender, even if it's playing out in a kind of practical way. So for example, if you feel very physically tired, don't dismiss the emotional and psychological implications of your situation because of seeing it as weak, or you're not wanting to share your vulnerability, or that's for other people. Embrace all sides of our nature. The more we embrace our spiritual, psychological, physical and practical health, the more we are whole. That's not a weakness, that's enlightenment. Now Capricorn, of course this cluster of energies are in your 5th house. Now I have a friend who's a Capricorn, an absolutely lovely person who is the same vintage as me, pretty well, slightly older. But since Uranus has gone into Capricorn, well, my friend has become very, very popular in a romantic context, and I think has got about 3 people talking to her at the present time. And why not? You're the sign of steadfastness, and when Uranus made its way through Aries for 7 years, oh my word, it caused some mischief around your home and emotional life. Now it's in your sector of self-expression, your sector of fun, your sector of artistry. Then use it to have fun. So if that means being a bit playful around your love life, good for you. I do think, because the moon is in your sector of friendship, that there could be someone that makes the transition from friendship to lover, even if it is a kind of initial agreement digitally at this stage. Or it's possible, if you're lucky enough to be in one of those parts of the world which is being unlocked, then you can actually physically meet up. But that Scorpio moon in your 11th house also suggests that a relationship that has been a love affair may just need to go to platonic. So it can work either way, because Uranus can be about needing space as much as sudden attractions. Aquarius, my sign. Mars in the 7th house in this particular chart, in a wonderful trine with Venus. Wonderful sex appeal. But a lot going on around home, emotion, family, which potentially has been an area of difficulty over the last couple of years because of Uranus making its way through the sign of Taurus, on and off, and also because in 2018 Mars in Aquarius at 1 degree, 0 to 1 degree I should say, was in a square with Uranus. So some of the energies we've had recently where Uranus has been buttressing up against both Saturn and also Mars was playing out then. And because of all the energy in the 12th solar house that's been evolving over recent times, and of course it depends on where in Aquarius you are, I think the pain has probably come more for those born at the beginning of Aquarius, the first 10, maybe 15 degrees. But for sure, I think family situation continues to be a bit raw, potentially. Or you feel very restless where you live. If you're locked in with people that you would normally see some of the time, now you're seeing them all of the time, it's a no-brainer that's difficult for an Aquarius because you like space. But if that's the case, try and get out on your bike, go for a walk, do solo things if that calls out to you. But also tell people how you feel. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And there is, a delightful opportunity with that midpoint on the ascendant here, if you are single, to relate to people. But Saturn here on the 1st house of Aquarius, in terms of seeing the wheel in equal house, for anyone born right at the start of Aquarius, as I am, this is about really cleaning the act up, being very self-disciplined, and really sort of not burning the candle at both ends, really. So I think there is a lot of potential there to do it yourself, declutter, tackle the garden. That's certainly true of Elisa and I. Our garden's a bit of a jungle, so we need to get out there and get stuck in. And Uranus may see us surprise ourselves in our 4th house by actually going and doing it. Now, if you're Pisces, the standout influence is definitely Neptune, forging that beautiful link with Venus. If you are crafting, doing home decoration, you're doing anything imaginative from the comfort of your home, that's wonderful. But it also points towards keeping a sense of reality. If there is somebody that you're attracted to, especially if they're introduced through the family, because Venus square Neptune is the trickster influence bar none really when it comes to relationships, because it can really put people on a pedestal. But that lovely link with Mercury suggests that you can communicate clearly and with sensitivity, and I do feel that you are going to be thinking a lot. There's going to be a lot of chat about different things. Maybe you're talking about moving once the shutdown completes, and if you do, you're wanting to have more space emotionally. So that's the 9th house for the moon. Still privacy, but just more space. So that's what it points to for me. So to summarize, we have this chart, we have the need to balance resources in the here and now, which we all know, against the longer term, but that really is emphasized in a very strident way by this particular full moon. The square between Pluto and Jupiter and the midheaven suggests the ongoing issue that we all have, the 6th house of energy and our welfare, against how we fit together and make the economies of our everyday lives and the world at large work. And of course there are some concerns. That Venus square Neptune asks us to be realistic about relationships, but Venus also forges a lovely angle to Mars, so it's about communication. Very, very important. And we also have Chiron in an opposition with Juno, which is saying keep the talking going, but we must keep very real expectations. I think this is, unfortunately, you can see how it's differed so much around the world. So South Korea dealt with the situation sensationally. Australia's done very well. New Zealand have done very well. Germany has done the best of the kind of Western countries in Europe. Some of the smaller Scandinavian countries, in terms of physical land size, have done very well as well. But of course, Britain looks like it's going to end up getting the biggest hit of all. Italy and France and Spain have all had a hit, but because of the way the figures have been calculated in the UK, it looks like the genie really has got out the bottle. And it seems to me the only way that this crisis is going to be really resolved is by testing as much as we can and bringing parts of society back together. And this chart suggests to me at the moment that there's going to continue to be, for the most part, quite a bit of a lockdown, because the energy of Mercury and the Sun in Taurus opposite the Moon in Scorpio points towards caution. The Moon in Scorpio is cautious, and even though the economy is crying out for things to be cranked up and started again, I got a feeling that this full moon will win out. But I am more optimistic by the end of May for some countries, and I think for the UK, for example, my prediction would be that the lockdown would be eased sometime about the 3rd week of June. We'll see if I'm right or not. But for now, thank you so much for joining me. Remember to join me at Twitter at horoscopeace.com. If you'd like to speak to me one-to-one and have your personal celestial map analysed in this way, or if you'd like to buy your personal astrology and get 30% off, you can see the offer beneath this video. But for now, please take care, good luck, and goodbye.